Recording in progress.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The meeting of the Newark City Council, please come to order. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those participating via Zoom, when we get to the item that you want to speak on, please use the raise your hand feature and the city clerk will turn on your microphone to speak at the appropriate time. Comments shall not exceed 5 minutes per speaker and must be consistent with current speaker rules and all applicable laws. Roll call, please.
Council members Collazo. Here. Bucci. Here. Freitas. Present. Hannon. Here. Mayor Nagy. Here. All present.
Okay. We'll let the record show that all council members are present. We do have a large number of presentations tonight, so I'd like to start off with asking Planning Commissioner Karen Bridges to join me up here. Hi, Karen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Karen Bridges, and Karen has served many years on our Planning Commission, and she has retired. And we have a commendation for Planning Commissioner Karen Bridges. Whereas Karen Bridges has provided dedicated service to the city of Newark by serving on the Newark Planning Commission since 1993. Wow. I was just a little kid then. Yes, yes. Whereas during Karen Bridges' tenure on the Planning Commission, the city of Newark has grown from a small town of 37,000 people to a Silicon Valley community of over 47,000 people. And whereas Karen Bridges has advanced the physical health and integrity of the city of Newark through her involvement in the review and approval of the Area 3 and 4 specific plan, the Bayside Newark Transit-Oriented Development Specific Plan, the 2013 Newark General Plan, the New Park Place Specific Plan, and a number of hotel and countless businesses and industries that provide property and sales tax revenue to the city. And whereas as a member of the Planning Commission, Karen Bridges is especially proud of the senior housing that has been approved for our community. And whereas through her participation as a member of the Planning Commission in the development review process, Karen Bridges has demonstrated integrity and a sincere concern for the quality of life in the city of Newark. And whereas in addition to her work on the Planning Commission, Karen Bridges is also a member of Toastmasters, the Newark Library League, and the Optimist Club. Now therefore, I, Alan L. Nagy, Mayor of the City of Newark, on behalf of the Newark City Council, do hereby commend Planning Commissioner Karen Bridges for her outstanding and honorable service to the Newark community. Karen, I'd like to present you with that, and thank you for your many years of service to our community, and your impact on this community is obviously felt and seen all over. So thank you very much.
Do I get to say a few words?
Yes, you do.
Oh, sure, okay. I'll try to keep it to a few words. I am really honored to have served on the Planning Commission all these years and to have been involved with so many great projects and events that we've had over that time. I'm equally proud to have worked with such a wonderful staff. They have always been so great to our Planning Commission in terms of providing us lots of information that we needed to make our decisions. And I'm equally proud of my commissioners over the years, the people that I've worked with. I know I'm leaving behind some wonderful commissioners that can go on and make some great decisions without me, I hope. But anyway, so with that, thank you very much, and I really appreciate this 20 years I've been.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Thank you. Now, I have three special commendations to make, and I'd like to start with Judy Takubo. Judy? Ladies and gentlemen, you know, in the city of Newark, I like to refer to us as the volunteer city, because certainly with the amount of activities that goes on in our community, we can't do it all with paid staff. And it does take committed volunteers to make things happen in a community. One such volunteer is Judy Takubo, who is, among many other activities she's involved with, she's involved with the Newark Library League, and she is the day-to-day person, I might say, at the library with managing the book sales for the Library League and the other things that she does there. And she's done this for an extended period of time. And Judy, I have a presentation for you. This is the Mayor's Certificate of Appreciation presented to Judy Takubo in recognition of your continuing volunteer service as a member of the Newark Optimist Club and the Newark Library League. Your volunteerism is a fitting belief that service to humanity is the best work of life. And Judy, I'd like to present that to you and thank you again for all your volunteer service. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, unlike Karen, I don't have that many years here. I think I've lived here now 9 years, and it's rather ironic. I just moved to Union City this last summer, but I do all my volunteer work here in Newark. So, and I thank you very much for the certificate. And I guess I'll continue to come back to Newark because my 2 sons live here, my 2 grandchildren are here, so you're not going to get rid of me.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask Charlie Mensinger to join me up here. Hi, Charlie. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, this community and this world was hit with a pandemic of just massive proportions in the last year and a half, 2 years, COVID-19. And what was extremely important, among many other things about COVID-19, is the fact that vaccination was the cure for COVID-19. And in order for people to be vaccinated, you had to kind of promote the whole concept of that. And while we reported in Facebook any number of times, and we had a committee here in Newark for trying to increase the number of people who were vaccinated, it was Charlie Mensinger who came up with the slides or these charts and graphs that you see on Facebook posted that show how Newark does compared to many other communities. And I'm proud to say that Newark is one of the top 3 or 4 cities in Alameda County with the COVID vaccinations. And I think a major reason for that is because of the charts that Charlie has presented. You know, Charlie is a past member of the Newark School Board. As a matter of fact, Charlie and later on Woody and also Judy all have the school, I guess, running through their veins. But it's his service to our community through the production of those charts, I think, which has meant so much over the last year and a half. So Charlie, I'd like to present you with this Mayoral Certificate of Appreciation in appreciation of your support during the COVID-19 pandemic, providing charts showing statistics that pertain to the Newark resident infection rate and the vaccination rate, and the fact that I think your charts have played a major part in stemming the tide of COVID-19 in our community. And I'd like to present you with that, and I'll ask you to say a few words.
Thank you. On behalf of my family, I would just like to thank Mayor Nagy and, of course, our wonderful city manager, David Benoon, and our fantastic folks up here. Again, I really appreciate this, and I'm truly humbled by this. Thank you very much.
And the last Mayor's Certificate of Appreciation is being presented to Woody Ballard. And Woody, could you please step up here? Hi, Woody. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Woody Ballard. You probably know him already, but Woody is a long-term resident of the community of Newark. Woody also, like Charlie, served on the school board for a number of years. Woody was one of the founders of one of the first Cub Packs in Newark in the early 60s. And his volunteerism continues to this day. Woody serves on the Graffiti Abatement Task Force along with myself and a number of other people. And faithfully, once a month on a Saturday, Woody, myself, and other people go out and eradicate graffiti in this community, and that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of graffiti in Newark. Woody, this certificate is being presented to you recognizing over 60 years of contributions to the residents of Newark as a scout leader, a school board member, and a community volunteer. You certainly are a true example that service to humanity is the best work of life. And Woody, for all that you do and for all that you're going to do, we want to thank you very much and know how much we appreciate your service to our community. So thank you. Thank you, friends. Thank you with that.
Now, you should know better than that. The memories are many. The very first recollection or memories I have of Newark was trying to get across Newark Boulevard. There are a bunch of crazy people on horses and wagons and banging because for some crazy idea, they wanted this community to become a city. And they were trying to drum up ideas on how we could convince people to become a city. I'm sure they had no idea it would ever turn out like this. And as far as thanking me, you would have a hard time dismissing this evening listing all the things I want to thank you for. All of the memories, the cooperation of everything that you and the other members of this community made it all possible. And all I can say right now is thank you for all the memories and the times and the pleasant that made my life such an enjoyable place to be. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
Thank you, Woody. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask that Sam Ackerman join me here. Hi, Sam. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sam Ackerman, obviously a Newark police officer. And Sam is retiring. And so in recognition of that, we have a commendation which I'd like to read. Whereas Sam Ackerman was hired by the city of Newark as a police officer in 2005. And whereas Sam Ackerman served as a police detective from 2011 to 2015. And whereas Sam Ackerman was a member of the SWAT team, a field training officer, a Citizens Police Academy instructor, a CERT team member and team leader, and a UAV team leader. And whereas Sam Ackerman was awarded a Newark Police Department Blue Award and a Newark Police Department Silver Award for his excellent investigative work. And whereas Sam Ackerman was awarded a City of Newark Pride Award in 2008 and was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2018, supervising a patrol team in the Field Operations Division. And whereas Sam Ackerman is now retiring after over 16 years of distinguished service to the Newark Police Department, now therefore I, Alan L. Nagy, Mayor of the City of Newark, on behalf of the Newark City Council, do hereby commend Sam Ackerman for his dedication to law enforcement and the Newark Police Department and wish him a happy and healthy retirement. Sam, congratulations. Well deserved. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And now if I could have Matthew Breen join me up here. Hi, Matt. How you doing? Good. Because all these young people are retiring. Jeez, I'm doing something wrong here, I know. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Matthew Breen. He's a supervisor in our Communications Operations Department. And whereas Matthew Breen was hired by the City of Newark as a communications operator on September 1 of 1990, working in the Police Dispatch Center. And whereas Matthew Breen was named Dispatcher of the Year in 1995, 1997, and 1998. And whereas Matthew Breen was promoted to the lead public safety dispatcher position on December 1 of 1999. And whereas Matthew Breen received a gold award for his hard work and dedication in ensuring that the 9/11 system upgrade and communications center remodel was completed expeditiously and with minimal disruption to day-to-day operations. And whereas Matthew Breen was promoted to communications supervisor, and whereas Matthew Breen served as the project manager for the research, evaluation, and implementation of the new computer-aided dispatch system and records management systems. And whereas Matthew Breen is now retiring after over 31 years of distinguished service to the Newark Police Department, now therefore I, Alan L. Nagy, Mayor of the City of Newark, on behalf of the Newark City Council, do hereby commend Matthew Breen for his dedication to law enforcement and the Newark Police Department and wish him a happy and healthy retirement. Matthew, congratulations. Enjoy your retirement. It's well deserved. Thank you. Thank you for all your service. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Want to say anything?
I just want to thank a number of people. First off, my wife and my kids for having put up with all my hours and strange hours and everything else. But you know, I've always felt this was a very important role, and I still do. And I appreciate the dispatchers in the back there who are making me look good every day. And to all the people from the PD, just really appreciate your honesty, your honor, and just your being out there all the time. I do appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, the next young person to retire from the City of Newark, may I please have Shamna Loth join me up here. Hi, Shaman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Shaman Loth, and Shaman is also retiring from the Newark Police Department. And we have a commendation recognizing that. Whereas Shamden Loth was hired by the City of Newark as a police cadet in 2001, and whereas Shamden Loth was hired as a police officer in 2002, where he served as patrol officer and a detective assigned to the Gang Violence Suppression Task Force and the Major Crimes Task Force. And whereas Shamden Loth was a member of the SWAT team, a field training officer, and a defensive tactics instructor. And whereas Shamden Loth was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2011, supervising patrol, support services, the special enforcement team, and the field training officer program. And whereas Shamden Loth was promoted to the rank of lieutenant overseeing patrol, the traffic unit, the K-9 program, the special enforcement team, and the SWAT team. And whereas Shamnan Loth was promoted to the rank of captain, where he managed both the Field Operations Division and the Support Services Division. And whereas Shamnan Loth graduated from the prestigious FBI National Academy, and whereas Shamnan Loth is now retiring after over 20 years of distinguished service to the Newark Police Department, now therefore I, Alan L. Nagy, Mayor of the City of Newark, on behalf of the Newark City Council, do hereby commend Shamnan Loth for his dedication to law enforcement in the Newark Police Department and wish him a happy and healthy retirement. Shamnan, congratulations on your retirement. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service. Okay, David Zender. Hi, David. Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Zender, and David is our Director of Recreation Community Services and is retiring, and we have a commendation, David, in recognition of that. Whereas David Zender began his career with the City of Newark on January 16, 1989, that's almost 33 years ago, and whereas David Zender was hired as an assistant recreation supervisor by Mr. Mel Nunes, the city's first recreation director, and has served the city in a variety of capacities, including as assistant recreation supervisor between 1989 and 1991, recreation supervisor between 1991 and 1999, senior recreation supervisor between 1999 and 2001, and recreation and community services manager from 2001 to 2006. Whereas David Zender was promoted to recreation and community services director in 2006, a position he has held to his retirement. And whereas David Zender has made significant contributions to our community throughout his career, including assisting with the planning for and managing the operations of many new recreational amenities, including the George M. Silliman Community Activity Center, the Clark W. Redeker Senior Center remodel, the Newark Skate Park, the Mel Nunes Sports Field Park, turf fields, and the Newbark Dog Park. And whereas David Zender diligently served his community throughout his tenure with the city, including supporting the Joint Task Force on Youth Issues Committee, the Senior Advisory Committee, and serving as the city's delegate to the Measure B Paratransit Committee. And whereas David Zender has been a longstanding and respected leader in the city of Newark and has provided invaluable support to the city council and city staff on a wide variety of issues and activities. And whereas David Zender is retiring after nearly 33 years of distinguished service to the city of Newark, now therefore I, Alan L. Nagy, Mayor of the City of Newark, on behalf of the Newark City Council, do hereby commend David Zender for his untiring work and dedication to the city of Newark and wish him well in many years of retirement. So, David, I'll present you with that.
Well, to say I'm nervous is an understatement, but saying goodbye is certainly never easy, especially after spending over 32 years of my life working for this incredible community and organization. That's longer than I've been married, and believe me, that sometimes seems like a long time. I want to take this opportunity to thank Mayor Nagy, the Newark City Council, my fellow executive team members, both past and present, city colleagues, past and present as well, and especially my awesome, amazing, dedicated Recreation and Community Services Department staff. For your support, unwavering commitment to making Newark such a great place to live, work, and play. I want to thank former Recreation Directors Mel Nunes and Daryl Reyna for taking a chance on an inexperienced kid from Alameda and giving me the challenge and opportunity of a lifetime. Though much has changed in Newark over the past 32 years, with the addition of what I believe are some of the best municipal facilities and programs in the Bay Area, one thing that has not changed in Newark is Newark's strong sense of community inclusiveness. I've been fortunate to witness this time and time again during community gatherings, sports events, senior center holiday celebrations, ribbon cuttings, park dedications, music at the Grove concerts, and yes, even city council meetings. So Newark will always have a very special place in my heart. And for that, I thank you all, and I wish you all just much success and much joy in the future. So thank you again.
Thank you, David. Congratulations. Thank you. Good start. The next item on our agenda is public comment. City Clerk Harrington, are there any requests to speak online?
No, Your Honor, no requests.
Okay. Then under public comment, was there anybody in the audience who would like to speak? No? Okay. Then we'll go to item D, consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items D1 through D18. And at this time, I'll ask the staff if there's any items you'd like pulled from the consent calendar.
Not this evening, Your Honor.
Okay. You know, if you'd pull a few of them, I wouldn't have to read these, all 18 of them. Okay. Okay. Are there any items that a public would like pulled from the consent calendar?
Nothing online, Your Honor.
Okay. And are there any items that the council would like pulled from the consent calendar?
D9, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, any others? That's it? Okay. So the consent calendar is going to consist of the following items. D1 is approval of audited demands. D2 is approval of the minutes of the November 18, 2021 meeting. D3 is adopt a resolution confirming the continued existence of a local emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic. D4 is adopt a resolution finding that there is a proclaimed state of emergency, finding that meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health or safety of attendees as a result of the state of emergency, and authorizing continued remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the City of Newark for the 30-day period beginning December 9, pursuant to AB 361. Item D5 is the motion approving the 2022 local appointments list and distribution. Item D6 is adopt resolutions establishing the City Council meeting calendar for 2022 and authorizing the city manager to take administrative actions during the August recess. Item D7 is adopt a resolution reappointing John Becker to the Planning Commission. Item D8 is adopt two resolutions for one, class specification changes for the building inspection series, and two, a personnel allocation change from two building inspectors, one, and one building inspector, two, to three building inspector 1-2 in the 2020-2022 biennial budget and capital improvement plan. Item D9 is adopt a resolution approving. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right, D9 was pulled. So item D10 is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute task order number 24 to the joint powers agreement with the city of Fremont for case management services. Item D11 is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a 5-year contract with Cicerco Incorporated for energy management systems program support at the Silliman Center and the Civic Center. Declaration of Cicerco Incorporated as a single source vendor and amendment of the 2020-2022 biennial budget and capital improvement plan. Item D12 is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute task order number 25 to the joint powers agreement with the city of Fremont for paratransit services. Item D13 is adopt a resolution authorizing a 3.3% increase to the solid waste collection, recycling, and organic services maximum rate for calendar year 2022. Item D14 is adopt two resolutions initiating proceedings for annexation of Tract 8453 to Zone 7, Harbor Point of Landscaping and Lighting District Number 19, ordering and approving the preliminary engineer's report, declaring intent to order annexation of Tract 8453 to the Assessment District, and setting public hearing date on January 27th of 2022. Item D15 is consideration of claims of Lenika Howard, Caleb Richard Howard, Terry Franklin, Ramiria Appleton, and Ramiria Appleton for Tamea Franklin. Item D16 is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the third amendment to the contractual services agreement with Metropolitan Planning Group to provide project review services associated with the proposed development referred to as FMC Willow. Item D17 is adopt a resolution accepting an annual impact fee reports for fiscal year 2018-2021. And item D18, adopt a resolution approving a contractual services agreement with RL Banks and Associates Incorporated for professional consultant services for Railroad Quiet Zone Study, Project 1276. So would someone like to move items be approved as recommended by staff, with any items approved by resolution or ordinance being numbered consecutively, and that the reading of the title suffice for purpose of introduction or adoption of the ordinance?
I will move consent. Second?
Okay. So there's been a motion and a second. Would you like to start voting? Please vote. Oh, try it again. Okay. Okay, motion passes 5 ayes. And we'll go to item D9.
Thank you, Mayor. So D9, in essence, Mr. Manoon, is an adjustment in salaries as we're increasing minimum wage throughout the state of California to $15 an hour. As I look at it, at an equity issue, as we raise the minimum wage, I want to ask a specific scenarios. Part-time rec person making currently $14 an hour, they're going to be increased to $15 an hour. A similar rec person in the same classification, currently making $15 an hour, will they receive then a commensurate increase in their salary effective January 1st as well?
Yes, they should. I'm going to ask our assistant city manager to provide some background and context on that.
Thank you. Yes, that's correct. So annually, we review all of the salaries for our temporary staff. Because of the last few years, the increase in minimum wage on the January 1st date for the state of California, we do increase everyone up to that minimum wage. And as you said, we make the same type of increase for all those that are in the same classification as well as those that are supervising that position or have that compensation relationship. So it will be commensurate with the increase for the classifications that have to be brought up to that new $15 wage.
And that would go in at the same time.
Correct.
Thank you. With that, Mayor, clarification, I appreciate that from staff. I will go ahead and move for approval of D9.
Okay. Okay. Is there any comments from the audience on D9? No? Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Will you please vote?
Before, so it's request to speak.
There we go. Boy, you guys are fast. Okay, motion passes, five ayes.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newark adopting a compensation plan for certain positions in the exempt service employee group to amend the schedule of hourly wage rates for part-time, seasonal, and temporary PST classification of January 1, 2022, and resolution number 11149.
Okay, thank you. Item E is public hearings, and there's no public hearings this evening. So we'll go to item F, other business. F1, Mr. Badoon?
Yes, good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. Item F1 is a presentation by city staff providing an overview on the status of the Central Avenue Overpass project. It's a from our Public Works Director, Mr. Soren Fajot, as well as the city's Assistant City Engineer, Mr. Jason Amai. Related to this, Your Honor, this presentation does include a recommendation that the council authorize a certain task order change for additional design engineering services. With that background and context, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Fajot. He's going to provide the first half of the presentation, and then it will be followed by Mr. Amai. Mr. Fajot?
Thank you very much, Mr. Badoon. Good evening, Your Honor, members of council. The item before you is indeed a request to adopt a resolution to authorize execution of task order number 2 with Quincy Engineering for additional design services associated with the Central Avenue Overpass project. As the city manager mentioned, Assistant City Engineer Jason Amai is here as well this evening, and Mr. Amai will discuss some of the details necessitating that task order change shortly. Before we dive into those specifics, however, we would like to provide a brief overall project update. This will include background information and revisiting of some of the primary reasons for completing the project, the overall design to date, some of the remaining design issues, and then a discussion of the overall funding picture and construction schedule. So the concept of an overpass on Central Avenue at the Union Pacific Railroad tracks has been in the city's long-term plans for many years, going back at least to as far as the project 2007 general plan update, where it is briefly mentioned in the transportation element as a long-term objective. The general plan update in the year 2013 also included a brief discussion of the project and an action item to pursue implementation of the project and to obtain the necessary project funding. The existing Newark Boulevard overpass just outside these doors and around the corner, of course, provides an overcrossing in the north-south direction over the Union Pacific Railroad tracks that run in the east-west direction. The city, however, does not have a grade-separated crossing of the railroad tracks in the east-west direction. This image here is a rendering of the future overpass at Central Avenue looking in the northeast direction with the Cargill Salt property in the foreground. The construction of an overpass on Central Avenue will provide the city with its only grade-separated structure in the east-west direction, and this will result in a number of important benefits. On the Union Pacific Railroad line, there is a switching yard just south of the Central Avenue crossing. The switching yard can sometimes result in multiple lengthy vehicular delays when freight trains are switching cars. The new overpass would eliminate that specific conflict. Although there have not been any train on vehicle accidents at this location, the potential for those accidents would obviously be eliminated with the new overpass. The overpass will also promote the orderly flow of vehicular traffic with no delays of any kind at the crossing. With the project, pedestrian and bicycle access on Central Avenue will be significantly improved with bicycle lanes and sidewalks in each direction. And this will be part of closing a major bicycle and pedestrian access gap through the Central Avenue corridor. And then finally, the overpass will ensure that there is a guaranteed emergency vehicle access in the east-west direction of the city in the event of an emergency train stoppage on the Union Pacific North-South line, which could block multiple at-grade crossings. So I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes discussing the design to date. This particular image is a view from the east looking in the southwest direction. You have the old pallet yard on the left side of Central Avenue and Cargill Salt now off in the distance to the southwest. On the right of Central Avenue is the property at the northeast corner of Central Avenue and Sycamore, the Central Avenue and Sycamore Street intersection. So Quincy Engineering is the city's design engineer for the project. They are a very experienced firm and have done excellent work to date. And the structural bridge design is actually about 90% completed at this point, and the roadway portion of the design is about 85% complete. Central Avenue through the project area would remain a 4-lane roadway with buffered Class 2 bicycle lanes and sidewalks in each direction. The total project length is just about 2,000 linear feet and extends from the eastern end in the foreground of this rendering, which is about 400 feet east of Sycamore Street, all the way over the tracks to the western limit, which is at Morton Avenue. The project was originally planned to be a single-span structure, similar to what we have at the Newark Boulevard crossing, with sloped embankment fill on either side of the structure. However, one of the major design constraints has turned out to be the very poor soil conditions in the immediate vicinity of the central crossing. And based on a thorough geotechnical analysis, the existing soils in the area are very compressible and simply cannot support the weight of additional traditional fill that would be used for a single span design without substantial settlement occurring. As a result, the design engineers recommended a multi-span structure rather than a single span over the tracks, with lightweight fill and retaining walls on either side of the bridge structure system. So of the 2,000 linear feet of project length, approximately 940 feet of that will be a 7-span bridge structure, with the center span being over the railroad tracks, and then 3 additional spans on each side. Well, we've got a flyover here. Take just about a minute to go through. This is going to, again, start in the old pallet yard site looking in the westerly direction. That's the Central Avenue and Sycamore Street intersection in the center there. If you look at the roadway, you see there's 2 distinct colors there, darker asphalt concrete roadway and then a gray colored concrete surface, which is the overpass, or the structural portion of the overpass. If you look closely under the bridge there, you can see the individual spans under the bridge with foundations visible at the ground. And we're heading over the distribution center that's on the north side of Central Avenue, just on the west side of the tracks. And now moving towards the western end of the project. There's a modified access driveway there for Cargill Salt, and we're finishing right here at the Morton Avenue intersection with Central Avenue. That's just a quick fly-through of the project area. There are some important and time-consuming design issues that remain with this project. I do want to point out that it is a very complicated and very expensive project with a lot of moving parts, and that we have experienced some delays to date, particularly related to utility coordination and relocation needs. Until now, unfortunately, staff has not been able to dedicate a specific project manager to the project due to other projects and priorities. But I am happy to report that Assistant City Engineer Amaya is now taking the lead as the project manager and will be working closely with the design engineer and all stakeholders to ready the project for construction. Among some of the larger remaining tasks is to coordinate with all property owners regarding access changes, driveway relocations, utility modifications, and easement needs. There are many property owners in the project vicinity, including one new property owner considering a significant development, which needs to be coordinated with the project. I had mentioned utility coordination and relocations. We do have just about every utility under the sun within the project area, including Pacific Gas and Electric for both gas and electrical services. The Alameda County Water District has a number of main lines through the project area. We also have Union Sanitary District gravity sewer lines, as well as the USD twin force mains that go through the project area. And then AT&T, Comcast, and a variety of other fiber optic carriers also have facilities in the project area. We have definitely had some challenges to date, especially with PG&E's overall timetable that has significantly impacted the schedule. But Mr. Amai is vigorously pursuing the remaining work with the utilities and all the necessary coordination that requires. The project, of course, requires significant coordination with Union Pacific Railroad as well. UP has been involved from the beginning, and while they can be difficult to work with at times, we do feel we have a design that will satisfy all of their specific requirements. The project, when it's under construction, will have significant impacts during the construction phase in terms of temporary traffic detours for the various stages of work. So as part of Quincy Engineering's scope of work, there will be significant public outreach to all residents and businesses that will be affected by the construction stage of the project. We'll have a number of mitigation measures in place to minimize overall impacts, and to ensure that traffic can move in a safe and orderly fashion around the project area. As I mentioned, much of the structural bridge design and roadway design has been completed. In addition to the utility relocations and access to adjacent properties that remain to be completed in terms of design, there are certain architectural design features that still need to be considered and that the City Council should have a role in selecting. These include items like fencing and lighting and other finish treatments that can add to the aesthetic value of the overpass and help create kind of a gateway to the Central Avenue business corridor. So we have a slide coming up with some potential fencing concept designs, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Assistant City Engineer Amai to share some of that information with you, along with the project funding and schedule.
Thank you, Soren. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the Council, and happy holidays. As Soren mentioned, one of the remaining design items the project team will be addressing is the architectural treatment of the bridge. With a total project length of 2,000 feet and a bridge span of over 900 feet, staff does see the Central Avenue Overpass project as an opportunity to establish a landmark feature here in the city of Newark at the gateway to its commercial industrial district. Now, because visibility of the bridge structure itself will be limited from surrounding surface streets, rather than adding architectural treatments to the exterior of the bridge, staff will be focusing on the driver's experience as they travel along the overcrossing. This will most likely include architectural enhancements, the fencing, and streetlights along the bridge structure. The photo in the upper left shows standard black fencing installed along Newark's only other railroad grade separation at Newark Boulevard. Now, to compare, the Newark Boulevard overcrossing is 140 feet long. At 940 feet, the Central Avenue overcrossing will be about 7 times as long. So it creates a very good opportunity to provide a unique visual experience for drivers. The photos along the top provide examples of architectural bridge treatments that have been used on other overcrossings. The one in the top middle is the Mesa Boulevard Bridge over Interstate 80 in Davis, and uses a combination of simple architectural treatment on the fence along with decorative lights. And the photo in the upper right is the Marina Boulevard Bridge over Interstate 880 in San Leandro. There you see additional architectural elements added to the fence, along with a departure from the typical black or gray coloring typically used. Here they used more of a greenish aqua color. You can also see that they added a concrete architectural element at the end that incorporates the city's seal. On the bottom are two preliminary architectural concepts developed by the project team. Both concepts sought to draw inspiration from prominent and historic features of Newark in the vicinity of the overcrossing. On the bottom left is the design inspired by Cargill's iconic red and orange colored salt ponds. And the concept on the bottom right draws from the Marsh Tidal Sluice, an original Dumbarton Bridge Railroad bridge, which was the first structure to span the San Francisco Bay. Now, I do want to stress that the intent is for these concepts to serve as examples only of treatments that could be integrated into the bridge design and are not meant to represent final choices at this time. Rather, staff will continue to work with the project team to develop a recommended architectural treatment, and we anticipate bringing the design to council for your consideration in 2022. Design and construction of these architectural enhancements could potentially be funded by art and public places money. And on the subject of funding, the project does remain fully funded through a combination of Measure B and Measure BB county sales tax funds as part of the Alameda County Transportation Commission's investment in the Dumbarton Corridor Transportation Improvements Program. $16 million of Measure B funds are currently allocated to the design and right-of-way phases of the project, as well as a portion of the anticipated construction costs, which are currently estimated at approximately $37 million. The balance of anticipated construction costs will be funded by Measure BB, Dumbarton Corridor Improvement Funds. Now, tonight, staff is recommending council authorize the city manager to execute task order number 2 with Quincy Engineering in the amount of $734,000 for additional design services. The Measure B funds currently allocated to the project are sufficient to cover the additional design costs. Staff is currently working with Alameda County Transportation Commission to finalize a new project funding agreement that would reflect the additional design costs. And we anticipate bringing this agreement to council for consideration in the first quarter of 2022. So looking ahead, as mentioned by Soren previously, bridge and roadway plans are nearing completion, and they should be done in early 2022. Design work for the relocation of water, sewer, PG&E, and joint trench facilities is scheduled to start soon and will likely drive the overall duration of the project. Now, because of this, staff has reinstituted regular utility coordination meetings with PG&E and other utilities in an effort to facilitate their progress. Before construction can start on the bridge and roadway approaches, all conflicting utilities must be relocated. Relocation of PG&E and communication utilities will happen first, and is anticipated to begin in early 2023 and be completed in early 2024. This would then allow the city to award a construction contract for the remaining water and sewer relocation work and bridge and roadway improvements. The anticipated duration of construction for the city's contract is 25 months, which results in an anticipated project completion in the spring of 2026. And that concludes staff's presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Harrington, are there any online requests to speak on this item?
There are not, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to speak on this item? No? Okay. Council questions or comments? No. Oh, Councilmember Collazo?
Thank you, Your Honor. So when you say relocation of utilities, the water and sewer, are they being relocated like entirely away from the bridge or just in a different area where it's not going to interfere with the foundations that you're laying down and stuff?
The latter. So the existing utilities, water, sewer, PG&E, all the are in the roadway structure. Well, I'm sorry, PG&E and the electrics are on overhead wires on the side, but water and sewer are in the roadway. So in order to construct the structure over the roadway with all of the piers and the bents there, you have to move them to the side. So they'll be moved just to the side of the bridge in a 30-foot corridor.
Because I was thinking, wow, to relocate all the way around that darn thing is going to be crazy. Can we go to the front page that we had right at the beginning?
Sure.
This building that's here on the right side of the building, as I saw on the other page, they have access to their land from Sycamore Street?
The building in the foreground is on Cargill Salt property, and they would have access.
I'm talking down here.
Yeah,
This is Cargill?
Yeah.
So.
It was the view from the.
Oh, it was turned around. Okay.
You're looking towards the east. Yeah.
Okay, this is turned around. Okay, so the one over here on by the corner of Sycamore and Central, the white building that has up there. Do they have access off of Sycamore?
Yes. So that building is presently occupied by Matheson Trigas.
Okay.
They don't own the site, but they lease the site, and they have an existing access off of Sycamore Street, and that will be maintained.
Thank you.
Okay, other question? Councilmember Han.
Thank you for an excellent report, and I love the picture that you showed of what it would look like moving around. That was perfect. I also want to thank you for looking at historical features for the bridge that represent the city of Newark. I think that's outstanding, and I look forward to the creative ideas that come forward from staff on that. You mentioned the cost is anticipated at $37 million, but construction is not going to begin until early 2024. Are you factoring in kind of an inflationary increase in terms of cost of construction when you look at the $37 million, or are you anticipating that it could rise above that come 2024?
There is a healthy amount of contingency in the estimates at this time to account for construction material costs increases.
I sometimes worry when monies are committed and they don't actually sit in our bank accounts. Is there any possibility that those funds might be diverted elsewhere, which could jeopardize this project, or are we pretty secure that that funding has been accounted for and committed to the city of Newark?
It has been allocated to the city of Newark and identified for this project, but as long as we continue to work with Alameda County Transportation Commission staff and show continued progress on the project, I'm pretty confident that we won't have to worry about that.
My last two comments is when we see the overpasses, for example, along 880, a lot of those overpasses have been graffitied. Is there anything we can do as we build our own overpass to minimize graffiti on this overpass?
That's a good question. So we will look into that. I know the fencing will help. The fencing that you see, well, let me go to this.
We'll defer access to that area.
Well, yes, and then in addition, if you see the photo in the upper left, which is the Newark Boulevard overcrossing, they have the curved section at the top. That's a requirement of Union Pacific Railroad, so that's going to be incorporated as well, and that's to discourage people from climbing over the fence and scaling to the other side. Now, how would we discourage people from, getting to the other side? We can look at.
It'll be a challenge.
Yeah.
It wasn't shown on the renderings or the fly-through, but there will be fencing underneath the bridge to prevent access from under the bridge to and potential graffiti on the side of the structure that'd be visible from other streets.
Well, any innovative ideas that you bring forward to minimize the graffiti would certainly be appreciated. What would be the speed limit on this overpass? Do you know at this point?
So it's designed to maintain the existing speed limit on Central Avenue, which is 35 miles an hour.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, if there's any other questions from council?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Freitas.
Yeah, a few things, few comments. For sure, thank you for the report, along with Mr. Jason. The length of the construction will be set 25 months. So how's the traffic will be directed during this? Will be just one way or will be completely laminated? Because it's our industrial area, so it's a lot of traffic there in that area. So.
Right. So during construction, traffic will be detoured for approximately, as you can imagine, because we're building the bridge right over the roadway, traffic will have to be detoured for approximately 19 months out of the 25. And during construction, traffic on Central Avenue will be detoured to Filbert and Sycamore. At one point, if you're coming up and down Central, you go to Sycamore to Filbert. The other way, you go from Filbert to Sycamore, and then get back to Central Avenue.
25 months, 90 months will be pretty much one-way directed, and the remaining 6 months will be...
The majority of the detour will happen, okay, if you go to the... let me go to this. So the first 5 months is going to be water and sewer relocation. We don't anticipate many detours during that time other than single lane closures. It's during the 20 months when you start doing the bridge structure itself or the roadway approaches to the structure, that's when you will have to detour traffic. So 19 out of those 20 months, there will be some kind of detours for Central Avenue traffic.
Okay, thank you. So now you mentioned about the business will be affected, but will be a temporary effect. There will be no business closing because there's construction, correct?
That is the goal, yes.
Basically. Okay, so because it's you as Councilmember Rios asking, I believe that project they can get in and out from Sycamore, so that will minimize it. I believe that the main business will be affected by that. So now. These funds are from the Measure B, the 60 million, and I guess still at the ACTC. That's the last spot, if you will, and Measure B will be closed. After that, will be combined with the BB. So you're talking about the 34 million overall, but this is the matching funds for us, correct? Oh, it's the overall. It's the 34 million will coming from ACTC.
Actually, all the 16 million and the anticipate up to 40 million is all coming from Measure B and Measure B.
Coming from,
yeah.
Okay.
So the majority of the project, almost all of it, virtually all of it is going to be funded through Measure B and Measure BB.
For the B and BB.
B and BB.
BB, yes. Yeah, so that's, okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, we have 16 million from old Measure B. Which you pointed out, and the remainder, the balance of the funds needed for construction will be coming from Measure BB.
There's been questions sometimes, how come that B is still open, because it's the remainder of the money to be evaporated, if you will, for us to in Newark. So yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's any more questions from council? Okay, if not, requires a motion and a second. We'll hear a motion.
I'll be glad to move the item as presented.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moved by Councilmember Freitas, seconded by Vice Mayor Bucci. Okay, you all start voting, please. You guys vote so fast.
We only button.
Motion passes 5 ayes.
You can see on the door.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newark authorizing the city manager to execute task order number 2 with Quincy Engineering, Inc. on services for the Central Avenue Overpass Project 1014.
It's a movie so fast. You're doing the homework.
Okay, Mr. Benoon, the next staff report, please.
Yes, good evening again, Your Honor, members of the council. Item F2 is a presentation regarding local preference for an affordable housing policy. Tonight, we have a presentation from the city's retained housing expert, Mr. Paul Penninger. If the council may recall, Mr. Penninger and Driscoll Planning Group. He's appeared before this council on a handful of occasions, including the development of the Affordable Housing Work Plan, as well as the recently held Planning Commission and City Council joint work session on the updated housing element. Tonight, Mr. Penninger is going to walk us through a presentation on local preference for the affordable housing policy that staff is working on developing. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Mr. Penninger.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It is a real pleasure to be here this evening in person at a city council meeting, which I have to say is the first city council meeting that I've attended in person since before the pandemic. This evening, I'm going to talk about local preferences and how the city of Newark can consider adopting a local preference policy in all new affordable housing that's developed in the city of Newark with city support. So what is a local preference policy? It's also sometimes called a tenant preference policy. It's a policy that cities and counties, local jurisdictions all over the country put in place, which allows the prioritization of community members in applications for new affordable housing opportunities. So what that means practically is that when you have a new affordable housing development and a Newark resident goes to apply for it, or someone who works in Newark goes to apply for it, they would be put at the front of the line, or they would receive a preference in the application process. The policy rationale for adopting local preferences policies are very straightforward. They're meant to ensure that housing supported by local resources serves local residents and workers. It also is meant to help residents facing displacement pressures due to economic and real estate market conditions, which, as we know, is a factor in most Bay Area communities given real estate market conditions today. There are, however, some limitations on the ability of local jurisdictions to adopt local preferences in new affordable housing applications. And these limitations are driven largely by legal considerations. And I'm not a lawyer. You have your city attorney here this evening to answer questions that are more legal in nature, but I can talk in broad terms to some of the basic legal limitations around local preferences issues. First of all, they may run afoul of intentional discrimination claims under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So when you're designing a local preferences ordinance, you need to make sure that no intentional discrimination is taking place. Also, and more importantly, local preferences policies should not have a disparate impact on certain protected classes of people under the Fair Housing Act. So by enacting a local preferences policy, you might unintentionally enact certain or have certain disparate impacts on certain protected classes of people, say by race, ethnicity, national origin, source of income, what have you. Finally, there is consideration around the constitutional right to interstate travel and migration that needs to be addressed in the design of local preferences policies. In general, local preferences policies are triggered in local jurisdictions when a jurisdiction provides subsidy or other kind of support to an affordable nonprofit housing or for-profit developer receiving local subsidy or support. And that support might come in the form of a land donation or a write-down of land. Also, local preferences can be enacted when there's an inclusionary housing ordinance, or what we call an affordable housing ordinance in place, which requires developers to set aside a certain number of units as affordable in an otherwise market rate project as a condition of approval. So these are the two main sort of triggers or reasons that local jurisdictions can enact local preferences policies. They must still, however, comply with HUD, Federal Government Housing Urban Development, HCD, State HCD Housing and Community Development Department, and County of Alameda guidelines if those partner agencies are providing various types of funding, which is common in affordable housing development. Affordable housing developers layer funding from a variety of sources, and typically there are sources from the federal government, the state government, and various layers of local government in order for projects to be feasible. The types of local preferences that jurisdictions enact are generally a preference for local residents, people who are current residents of a jurisdiction, in some cases people who were former residents who were displaced by economic circumstances. That's also something that has been enacted. Also, preferences for people who are employed in the jurisdiction. So people who live and or work in the jurisdiction. Those are the most common types of local preferences that local jurisdictions put in place and that you'll want to consider in the city of Newark. There are other possible criteria. These are by far the most common and the most straightforward to justify when you're putting together a policy. So establishing a local preferences policy is both complicated in the types of analytical steps that need to take place, but also fairly simple at a broad level in terms of the step-by-step process. So the first step is for you as city leaders to define the types of preferences that are desired, whether that's live, work, or live-work preference. Then to direct staff to prepare a displacement study to show the need for a local preference policy, so to demonstrate through economic data that there is the risk of displacement of existing residents and long-time workers from the city based on economic factors. And then to prepare, along with that, a disparate impact analysis to show that the implementation of the proposed policy won't adversely impact certain protected classes of people. After you've prepared the study, you've engaged a consultant to prepare the study, you would then refine the preferences policy consistent with the study findings, and then direct staff to adopt and implement the policy. There's a few key policy choices that we want to go over now and tee up a discussion for you to provide feedback on. The first and most important of which is around the preference criteria that the city should adopt. In most places, it's a live-work preference, but there are some jurisdictions that simply provide a preference criteria for local residents rather than both local residents and employees. Our recommendation, or staff's recommendation rather, is to create a live-work policy that will apply to projects receiving city support. So a live-work policy. You can also apply the preference to 100% of units that are being supported by city funds or that are subject to an affordable housing ordinance, or local jurisdictions can apply the preferences to some lower percentage. The reason for applying the preference to a lower percentage may be that it's more justifiable or that it is more consistent with guidelines from HUD, from HCD, or from the county. The recommendation of staff in this case is to create a policy that will apply to 100% of available units, subject to regulatory and legal limitations and study findings. But as a starting point, at least in terms of basic program design, that we start with a policy that applies to 100% of available units. There's another couple of sort of more technical, procedural policy choices that we'd like to put before you. The first of which is around how you manage the queue in the selection process of folks who come forward and would like to take advantage of local affordable housing opportunities. In some cases, local jurisdictions have a first-come, first-served policy where the first household through the door is able to access the preferences. In other cases, there's a lottery. And in this scenario, we would recommend that the selection process be managed by either the city or the developer. In more mid-size or smaller jurisdictions, it's more typically the developer
that manages these types of processes subject to city guidelines and oversight. So the lottery-based selection process tends to equalize all households who are coming through to apply for a housing opportunity, rather than just putting those households who come first through the door in a more advantageous position. So the staff recommendation in this case is to implement a lottery-based selection process to equalize opportunities, and that process be managed by developers consistent with city oversight and guidelines. Then the final policy choice is really about waitlist management. And there is so much demand for affordable housing that often waitlists are formed for local households that would like to take advantage of affordable housing opportunities. These waitlists can be managed either by city governments, by local housing and community development departments, or by property managers and developers. In the case of Newark, the staff recommendation is that there's a requirement for developers to establish and manage a wait list for each property, and that this not be a role of the city government to manage and to manage the wait list. Of course, this would be subject once again to city guidelines and oversight. So what are the next steps? After this evening, what we would propose is going forward with preparing a displacement and disparate impact study, engaging a consultant with expertise in this field and with recent qualifications of preparing such studies that have been accepted by partner agencies and past legal review, that we go forward with preparing those studies, and that based on study findings and partner agency review, that the city design a live-work policy to be implemented and to be presented to the council for review and adoption. Thank you very much, and look forward to your questions.
Okay. Ms. Harrington, are there any online requests to speak on this item?
There are not, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody in the audience like to speak on this item? Okay, council's questions or comments? Vice Mayor Bucci.
Not turning. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Penninger, for the report. You know, I've kind of been the squeaky wheel on this recently, so I just wanted to kind of run down a few questions I had and hopefully clarify a few things moving forward. I'm certainly excited about the study that we're doing. Is this going to be, I know we're going to do it as a citywide study, but I've also heard, for instance, on the timber project, it was mentioned that they would do a displacement study that was a little more project specific. If we do a citywide study, would this cover any projects going on forward, or would they also have to do a similar study as well?
You want to take this, Steve? So the purpose of the study would be to apply to all projects moving forward. It would mean that the Timber Cove project, wouldn't need to do a study, but that rather that the study would establish a policy citywide that would set the standards for local preferences in new affordable housing.
Okay. How long would a study like that stay in place, typically?
Very good question. The data that supports the study is largely from the American Community Survey, from the decennial census and the American Community Survey. Much of the data will remain current for a couple of years, at least a couple of years, and may need to be refreshed when new U.S. Census American Community Survey data is available at the level of the city that provides particularly data around income and race and ethnicity and other factors. I think that there's no one answer to this. HCD and Alameda County and others will provide guidance and ongoing review of local policies around these types of studies.
Okay, so would it be safe to say that the study would take the last 10 years into consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. The study will look at trends between 2010 and 2020, and also much of the data that will be presented in the study would come from the American Community Survey 2019 data, which is a more detailed data set. It's a sample of households that provides more detailed cross-tabulations around income, ethnicity, and other factors than you can have from the decennial census.
Specifically, what are they going to look for in a study like this? And I know you had mentioned several protected classes of folks, obviously, when it comes to housing and things. So
Yeah.
are we looking at age information? Are we looking at student loss? Are we looking at certain demographics? I'm just looking for some examples of what we might expect.
For the displacement study, all of the above. Certainly looking at the displacement, the potential, the actual and the potential displacement of local households based on economic conditions, and looking at the ability of households to compete in the real estate market based on trends in rental and for-sale housing markets. Right? That's the displacement study. On the disparate impact study, that's driven very much by the types of protected classes that are covered by federal law and state law, and in some cases by county and local jurisdiction regulations. So it would be everything from race, ethnicity, age, trying to think of the other categories, Mr. City Attorney. There's about 10 of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah, all the protected classes covered under the Fair Housing Act.
Sexual orientation in California.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
People with
the
one
big
eye.
one is generally going to be, race.
Okay.
Yeah. So the history of sort of local zoning in creating patterns of segregation and exclusion in this country is in part what drives, at least at the federal level, concerns about local preference policies running counter to fair housing purposes. So at least from the HUD perspective, and this is my understanding from talking to people in Washington who work very closely with HUD around these types of policies, is making sure that local preferences policies don't have the unintended consequence of disparately impacting certain racial categories of people. So for example, by enacting a local preference policy, you're not having the unintended consequence of excluding African American or Latino or Asian households from a local housing market. That's what you have to show with your disparate impact study. And there's a variety of very sort of technical indices and demographic analyses that you can do to do that. And we have some good examples of those in recent studies that were completed, which Councilmember Bucci, I think you might be particularly interested in, become a PhD in demographic analysis.
Well, we certainly understand the history of redlining and things in this country, and understand why those rules are in place. So I don't think anybody here disagrees with that. When I was reading the report, I was actually kind of interested in the lottery model as well, and was happy to see that that's what we're recommending, especially since it doesn't really penalize people who may have came late. I guess my question is, let's say you were chosen, and obviously this is something we would talk about in the policy, but what sort of guidelines are there in place for somebody who was chosen? How often do we check on their eligibility, and what would be the process if, I think it's a good thing if somebody became ineligible and started making more money and was in a better position. So what happens in that scenario to somebody, and how much time would they typically have to make other arrangements and things like that? Because I think the last thing we want to see is somebody lose eligibility and then we're the ones pushing them out the door.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that's a really good, I mean, that's something that is not necessarily just part of the discussion around a local preferences policy that you could enact in Newark, but around affordable housing in general. And the answer is that most affordable housing funding programs require some sort of annual or biannual income certification process, where the property management and the major nonprofit developers and property management firms that are very active in this region, the Bridge Housings and Mid-Peninsula Housings and Edens of the world, have a lot of expertise in this and systems in place to do annual income checks and eligibility checks. And then there are also processes to provide a transition for households that have that do have now higher incomes and that aren't necessarily eligible to live, say, for example, in tax credit financed housing, and need to find another housing opportunity that is, consistent with their means. In part, for the vast majority of affordable housing, and this is getting a bit wonky, is financed by low-income housing tax credits, and the investors in low-income housing tax credits, in order to receive their tax credits, have to show that the households that are in the housing that's being financed by the tax credits are actually income-eligible households, right? And so there's asset managers, property managers that are responsible for undertaking these income certification processes to ensure that the people who are living in the affordable housing actually need the affordable housing. But it has been a big source of concern, particularly during the pandemic years, around and with such a limited supply of rental housing and ownership housing. But what do you do with those households that do sort of, begin to earn higher incomes that allow them to move on from affordable housing? And how do you ensure that they have a place to go in the same community that they can also afford?
Yeah, complicated. So I'm looking forward to this study to see what the numbers are. Part of the reason I wanted to make sure the kids were being counted is because it's an issue we've talked about here quite a bit, that the student enrollment has dropped by 40% in 9 years. So I think we got a good idea of.
Oh, I thought you were talking about university age students or community college age. Did you mean families with student age, with school age children?
I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So the study will look at families by household size, by type. It will look at households by type, by families versus non-families, and families with children, households that are headed by senior households with one or more members who has a mobility limitation or quote-unquote disability. They'll look at all sorts of different factors.
Okay, and you know what? I didn't see it in the presentation, but I did read it in a report. Could we just get a reminder on how long we expect this report to take?
I was just talking about that with the community development director earlier. Once we get the consultants underway, the report shouldn't take more than 60 to 90 days to complete. I don't want to be too aggressive. 30 days would be very fast indeed. The firms that would be doing this are very experienced, very expert at marshaling the data, analyzing the data, and preparing these reports. The more lengthy process is actually vetting the reports and the report findings with your sister agencies at the County of Alameda and at the state of California. And so that process, unfortunately, in the experience of other jurisdictions that have recently done these studies, is more time-consuming. There can also be sometimes, depending on the report findings, legal considerations which need to be taken into account, and nuances, and in some cases the need to particularly around the disparate impact study, to do more careful and more detailed disparate impact study analysis to support the policy. But the initial study, from the moment that the consultant starts to the first draft, it should be a really pretty straightforward, not lengthy process. That's not the time-consuming part. It's the review process by other agencies.
Yeah. Well, we certainly know how long the county can take sometimes, and they want to be indemnified. So, okay. So I guess my last question for now would be, since we're kind of looking at the lottery model and some of the things that we're looking to recommend here, are there other local cities that utilize that same model, and is that the reason we're going that way, and do we have a higher chance of getting through with the county and getting everybody on board by doing it that way?
I don't know that, this is just my ignorance on this particular topic. I don't know that the county's guidelines focus in particular on the lottery topic. I think that they're more interested in the broader, the broader types of preferences that are being provided by the policy, whether it's a live-work or a live-work preference, or if there's some sort of other preference that's put in place. Yeah, there's lots of jurisdictions that have done these. There's the Redwood City recently enacted a policy, the city of Alameda, the Tri-Valley cities in Alameda County did a study together. So Livermore, Dublin, and Pleasanton did a study together, and there's a preferences policy in place for residents and workers of those three jurisdictions. and then Livermore separately has a preferences policy. There are a lot of jurisdictions in Alameda County and across the region that have recently done these policies or are in the process of enacting these or thinking, or exactly where you are, which is with thinking about the broad outlines of what kind of policy you want and getting staff going and consultants going on designing it. So
Okay.
you're one of many jurisdictions that are have either recently done this or currently considering doing this.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. And I will relinquish my time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Hannan.
Thank you. Councilmember Coyasa, did you have a question? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the report. I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. You were talking about local government can adopt an affordable ordinance. Is that something we could do as a replacement to doing a displacement study and/or policy? Did I understand that correctly? If we did an affordable housing ordinance, we could incorporate the displacement policy into the ordinance. Did I understand that?
Yes, I mean, yeah, the city currently does have an affordable housing ordinance, so it indicates and provides regulations for the mitigation of commercial and residential development on the need for affordable housing. Currently, we're accepting a fee as payment of mitigation. Certainly, the affordable housing ordinance can be modified to include an inclusionary housing ordinance, and in fact, that's on part of the affordable housing work plan that council approved earlier this year. As part of that, we could also include the local preference requirements and state what those regulations are as a matter of ordinance and requirements.
But it's not a replacement for doing a full disparate impact and displacement study. You still have to design a local preferences policy for developments that are receiving funding from the city, as opposed to those that are providing affordable housing per an affordable housing ordinance or paying a fee per the affordable housing ordinance.
In doing a displacement study, is there the possibility that the study will provide information that advises us that we really don't have the need for a policy?
Yes.
And can you tell me, has that happened fairly frequently? Is that a rare occurrence?
It hasn't happened that I'm aware of in the Bay Area.
Okay.
But there has been a, so in the case of the Tri-Valley cities that I mentioned where they did a joint study, the consultants did a very detailed displacement study, presented that to Alameda County for their review, and the county found that based on their understanding of the data that there wasn't a strong enough argument for a jurisdiction level affordable housing preference policy in the cities of Dublin and Pleasanton, but that there was enough compelling evidence of displacement from the three cities combined to other parts of the region or Alameda County. So there is a possibility that you could find that there's not a risk of displacement of current residents in Newark based on housing market conditions and economic conditions. That's been more rare in my experience, and I don't want to say it's not possible, but it's certainly, given the tremendous pressures that renter households and owner households in particular are under for finding affordable housing, it would be an unlikely ultimate result.
Okay. I think I heard Vice Mayor Bucci say this, but I would also support a lottery versus first come, first serve. I would support a lottery. In your presentation, there was a bullet that referenced a constitutional right to travel. Can you go back to that point, that bullet?
Yeah, I can just begin to answer the question. So these are just some very broad legal limitations or legal considerations on the ability of local jurisdictions to enact preferences policies. And
So I didn't understand that bullet.
so one of the
Constitutional
points
right
is
to
that,
interstate travel and migration.
yeah, so one of the points is that your policy might have the unintended effect of discriminating against people who are moving to Newark from other states for economic opportunities or for housing opportunities. And so you need to ensure in the way that you're designing your policy that there's a really compelling need for it, and that it's not running afoul of this right of people from other parts of the country to move to Newark.
Okay. And then my last
Did I
example.
state that correctly, Mr. City Attorney?
Yeah, I think, yeah, generally the key there is you want to avoid policies that may impact that right. For example, a temporal policy, right, that a certain time period, well, you have to be here for this period of time, or you can't be here for this period of time, or this is going to count, or that's not going to count. So that could implicate the right to travel, saying, well, you have to be here so long, and you can't leave here, and if you leave here, then you're not going to be counted. So that's where that would be implicated, is that type of policy.
Okay.
It's the more, really in my understanding, the more important issue that most jurisdictions are facing in developing policies and in having these policies be accepted by partner agencies is around disparate impacts.
The live, work, people that live in the city of Newark currently, is there a minimum residency that they must demonstrate to qualify for housing? In other words, somebody that's been here, I mean, do they have to be here a certain period of time to qualify? Is that part of the criteria?
It could be. I think I think more commonly it's just showing that you're a current resident of the local jurisdiction. There are various nuances to these types of policies. There are some cities that have enacted preferences for, as I mentioned, folks who were former residents of the jurisdiction but who were displaced. And for that, they have to show that they were residents of the jurisdiction and that lived in the jurisdiction for some certain minimum amount of time. And the more sort of specific you get in your requirements and the more detailed, the more scrutiny you will face.
More you're open to challenge.
The more scrutiny you will face from the other levels of government that are looking at these policies.
And then I want to make sure I understand in my own mind, you indicated that some of the communities look at, for example, 100% of the units being available for those folks. So if I have 18 units, for example, in an affordable housing complex, I can make all 18 of those units available to folks that may be or have been displaced.
Yeah, you could. Well, what you would do is you could say 100% of those units were subject to the local preferences policy, and that Newark residents or Newark employees would receive a preference in their application for applying for housing in that development.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, other questions? So I have one question, maybe we'll end it with this. So we do everything right. We create a policy that takes into account the ability of local people to get one of these affordable units. But then we put the onus on the developers, if I understand correctly, to kind of run this program.
I think the city will still have to exercise, well, the city will have to promulgate guidelines. We'll have to work with the affordable housing developers and property managers to provide oversight and guidance on the implementation of the policy. But the developers under this scenario would be managing both the wait list and the application process.
Okay, so my question is going to be then, who is it that gets sued?
Hopefully nobody gets sued.
Right. We're in California, though.
I think the answer, it depends. I mean, potentially the city could face, legal claims if there was a claim by some, party with standing that the policy violated some part of the law, and or a developer / property manager that was administering the guidelines could potentially face legal action by, a potential resident who was trying to live in the unit. Once again, I'm not an attorney. I did go to law school, but I am not an attorney. I'm not a member of the bar. So I'm looking over at my current members of the bar colleagues to provide further guidance here.
And they're looking back at you.
I think the answer, unfortunately, is both. Both the city and or the developer could face legal action, but there would be different types of claims that could be made.
Right, so.
You are, as a city, you are putting some of the risk onto the developer property manager by asking them to manage the selection process and the waitlist management process. And you're conserving staff resources, and you're designing a kind of a more nimble policy that can be adjusted over time. And as I mentioned before, these affordable housing developers and property managers, for the most part in this region, are very sophisticated, are very used to administering these types of programs, and they also have a lot of experience and very smart attorneys who work with them to make sure that they are not doing anything that could potentially violate the law in any way.
So what is the best way of protecting ourselves and protecting our community against potentially trivial lawsuits?
I think this is one of the reasons you do such a thorough job up front with these studies and making sure that the policies themselves are completely consistent with the law and with guidelines from your partner agencies at the state and at the county, and that you are as detailed and as thorough as possible in establishing the policy to inoculate yourselves against frivolous lawsuits, and that you're also choosing the right developer partners, and that you're providing very clarity and detailed guidance to your developer partners and property manager partners on what the expectations are.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't get any help from my attorney friends.
Okay.
I was just going to add, Your Honor, I mean, this is, we'll hire very qualified consultants who, this is all they do day and night. They'll tell us what we can or can't legally defend. As Paul mentioned, we'll have partners. I think it's a good sign if the federal government is funding your project with something like this. They'll want to know that you've got a justifiable study, and if they say that study is sufficient, that's a good sign. Similarly with the state and the county. So if your partners all think that it's a justifiable program, that's a good sign. So I think it's, as Paul mentioned, it's doing the heavy work up front. And then, as was discussed earlier, just reevaluating that policy when the data changes, just to make sure that it's still a good policy. And we'll be confident that we can legally defend that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this item was informational only, and no action is requested or required. So again, I want to thank you, Mr. Penninger, for your insights and presentation to us, and certainly Stephen and the rest of your group as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to item G, which is City Council. And the first item under City Council matters is selection of a new vice mayor and the authorization and the authorization of the vice mayor to execute financial documents. So, Ms. Harrington, are there any online requests to speak on this item?
There are not, Your Honor.
Okay. Would anybody in the audience like to speak on this item? Okay, so if not, I'm going to recommend to the council that Council Member Hannon become the new vice mayor. And at the same time, I want to thank Vice Mayor Mike Bucci, who did an incredible job this past year, facing some significant issues and represented the city very well in those efforts. So Vice Mayor Bucci, I want to thank you again for your service to our community and to being Vice Mayor. So, yes. And at this time, I would accept the motion to appoint Councilmember Hannon as the Vice Mayor for the next year.
I would like to make the motion to appoint Councilmember Hannon as our next vice mayor.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Would you like to vote?
A second is not always assured.
I'll make the motion, but I'm not going to vote myself out.
So we have four yeses and one abstention. Councilmember Bucci abstaining. Okay, well, congratulations.
You want to just trade seats now, or?
What the vice mayor doesn't realize is we Irish have long. In fact, could I take a picture of that, Mayor?
Wait.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newark authorizing signing and endorsing checks, warrants, and other instruments.
Okay, thank you. So then, the second item under council matters is the council assignments. So would any council member like to make any changes to their assignments? And no, council member Hannon, you cannot have all of council member Bucci's assignments.
Though, Mayor, I'm certainly happy to set aside for you, if you would like, sir, to be a member of the East Bay Community Choice Program. I'm happy to become the alternate there if you'd rather step up.
Well, you know, I kind of make it a point not to take any of these appointments that have remuneration to them. And so I would respectfully decline.
I understand.
Okay, and besides that, I don't like 5-hour meetings. Okay, so it doesn't sound like we have any changes that anybody's requiring or requesting. Ms. Harrington, is anybody online to speak on this item?
There are not, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody in the audience like to speak on this item? Okay, anybody on the council want to speak on this? Okay, if not, is there a motion and a second?
Motion to move the assignments, Mayor?
Okay.
Second.
Okay, please vote. Okay, motion passes 5 ayes on that.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newark confirming the mayor's appointments to various agencies, boards, commissions, and committees.
Okay, thank you. So our next item under the is the council member comment. And I would like to start with asking the city council to adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of both Vincent and Maureen Dobson. Vincent died in 2015 and Maureen in December of 2021. Both served as mayors of the town of Newark-on-Trent in the 80s, with Vincent having been one of the first members of the Newark Town Council. Both also served on the Nottinghamshire County Council, which happens to be located as part of Sherwood Forest. They were instrumental in the formation of the Newarks of the World organization and helped promote international fellowship through that organization. I, along with the contingent of Newark, California community members, attended the Newarks of the World events in Newark-on-Trent, England. Maureen and Vincent both made significant contributions to their community and to that organization. Their enthusiasm, their work ethic, and caring for the residents they served will be their legacy long after, with many committee and organizations they nurtured. They leave behind a daughter, Rebecca, and a son, Charles. And God bless them both, and may rest in eternal peace. And with that, I would also like to wish all of our residents, staff members, a happy holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and a wonderful New Year. And let's see, I think there's a DUI checkpoint that coming up here that the council may be aware of, along with our residents. But be safe over this holiday time, and with that, I'll ask the new Vice Mayor, Hannon, if you have any comments you'd like to make.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to join you in thanking Vincent and Maureen for the service to their various communities. Public service is a challenge day in and day out, and to serve your community is a noble thing to do, and want to certainly thank them for their service. I also want to take just a moment to thank Dave Zender, Matt Breen, Chaman Loth, and Mr. Ackerman for their service to the great city of Newark. Public service is an honor, and we need to remember that as we serve our communities every day, and they certainly did so professionally and with dedication for many years, and I want to join you, Mayor, and my colleagues in wishing them a happy retirement. And then finally, Mayor, I want to really commend city staff for what I thought was just an outstanding tree lighting ceremony that we had here the other day. The size of the crowd was significantly larger than what we are accustomed to. And I think it's a testament to the beautiful civic center that we've built here, and all of the things that we've been able to accomplish for our community these last few years. But those folks that we really need to thank are our residents for supporting us and for supporting our ideas as we move forward. And I look forward to serving the community in 2022. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Freitas.
Yeah, thank you. So to Maureen and Vincent, rest in peace. I'd like to wish him well to the people who was retired tonight, and you recognize with your mayor certificate, and all those to the public servants to best wishes, and thank you for their public service, because it was like, if you add all those years together, it's like a very long term. And to everyone, safe and happy holiday season. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I just want to congratulate all of our newly retired employees as well. It is certainly not fun to watch 100 years of institutional knowledge walk out of the door, but I'm certainly happy for them, and we're all working towards it. So congratulations to them. I just, again, wanted to thank Karen Bridges for 28 years of service on our planning commission. That was amazing. And then, of course, Judy, Charlie, and especially Woody for their awards tonight. I mean, I think if you ever get the chance to talk to Woody, he'd tell you he'd want to be a volunteer here for another 60 years if he could. So, I mean, they don't get any more Newark than Woody. So I was especially happy to see him be honored tonight. I guess other than that, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, happy holidays to everybody, and Happy New Year. And I want to wish our new Vice Mayor the best in this coming up year. Hopefully you won't have as much pandemic as I did. And we will see you all in January.
Okay, great. And Councilmember Collazo.
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, Newark is such a special place, and I'm sure all the Newarks of the world are almost as special as our place. So I want to thank everybody that has served on any kind of committee, served in any kind of way to any Newark. But I want to give a special thanks to everybody that gives their time, that comes to volunteer for our great city. I know that volunteer hours almost match the paid hours of our employees, and that's what makes our city so great. And also, I'd like to thank and wish well to all our members that are retiring. I'm sure you're going to miss us, so you can come back and visit anytime. There's always seats open here in the council for you to sit and chat with us for a while. And of course, I want to wish everybody a very happy and safe Christmas. And in my other language, Feliz Navidad. Shop Newark.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that ends the council matters. We'll go to item H, which is closed session. Ms. Harrington, are there any online requests to speak on this item?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Would anyone in the audience like to speak on this item? Okay. Then the city council meeting will now recess and go into a closed session for conference with legal counsel. Anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of section 54956.9, and there's 2 cases. So we are adjourned to the closed session. And we will adjourn the meeting after the closed session.
2 hours.